Welcome to Mars Sunset Media. In today's video, we're exploring the dark and haunting history of one of the most infamous ships from the transatlantic slave trade, the Brookes. Known for its grim role in transporting enslaved Africans across the Atlantic, the Brookes became a powerful symbol in the fight against slavery. We'll dive into the design and size of the ship, its brutal voyages, the lives of those on board, and its legacy. Let's uncover the story behind this notorious ship and its impact on history. The Brookes was a merchant ship built in Liverpool in 1781, originally intended to carry goods across the seas. However, it was repurposed as a slave ship, a vessel designed to transport human beings in the most inhumane conditions imaginable. Size: the ship was about 103 feet, 31 meters in length and 26 feet, 8 meters in width, with a gross tonnage of 320 tons. This was a typical size for a slave ship of the time, capable of holding large numbers of people, though originally intended for cargo. Design: the ship was modified to maximize the number of enslaved Africans it could carry. This included adding platforms between the decks to create more space, though this also meant more people were crammed into the hold in extremely cramped conditions. Each person had less than 6 feet of space to lie down, with heights between decks as low as 4 feet in some places. The most famous aspect of the Brookes is the illustration published by British abolitionists in 1788. This diagram depicted the ship carrying 454 enslaved Africans, each laid out shoulder to shoulder with no room to move. This image shocked the public and became a key piece of anti-slavery propaganda. However, in reality, the Brookes often carried far more than the depicted number. Records show that it sometimes carried over 600 enslaved Africans on a single voyage. The Brookes made at least 10 known voyages as a slave ship between 1781 and 1804. These voyages were part of the infamous Middle Passage, where enslaved Africans were transported from Africa to the Americas under harrowing conditions. Years active: the ship was active in the transatlantic slave trade from its construction in 1781 until its final recorded voyage in 1804. During these years, the Brookes carried thousands of enslaved Africans across the Atlantic, with each voyage lasting several months. Destinations: the ship primarily sailed from Liverpool to the West African coast, where it would pick up enslaved Africans, and then across the Atlantic to the Caribbean and the Americas. Common destinations included Jamaica and Barbados, where the enslaved individuals were sold and dispersed to various plantations. Voyage route: the typical route for the Brookes started in Liverpool, loaded with goods such as textiles, rum, and firearms. These items were traded for enslaved people in West Africa, after which the ship embarked on the Middle Passage to the Caribbean. After selling the enslaved Africans, the ship would return to Liverpool, often with goods like sugar, tobacco, and cotton. Ownership: the Brookes was owned by Joseph Brookes, a prominent merchant in Liverpool. Brookes, like many of his contemporaries, made a fortune from the transatlantic slave trade. Liverpool was a major hub for the British slave trade, and many ships like the Brookes were financed by wealthy merchants who saw the trade in human lives as a lucrative business. Captain: over its years of operation, the Brookes was captained by several men. The most notorious was Captain Thomas Troughton, who commanded the ship during some of its most infamous voyages. Troughton was known for his strict discipline and harsh treatment of both the crew and the enslaved Africans on board. Under his command, the Brookes completed multiple voyages, each marked by significant suffering and loss of life. If you are enjoying this video, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Hit the bell icon to stay updated with our latest releases. Thank you to everyone that have already subscribed. The crew of the Brookes typically consisted of around 35 to 40 men. While life was harsh for the crew, it was nothing compared to the unimaginable suffering endured by the enslaved Africans below deck. Crew life: the crew members were responsible for maintaining order on the ship, which often meant using violence to keep the enslaved Africans subdued. They'd also faced harsh conditions, including disease, malnutrition, and the dangers of the sea. Despite being perpetrators of immense cruelty, the crew often faced high mortality rates, with many dying from diseases like dysentery, smallpox, and malaria. Conditions below deck: The enslaved Africans were shackled in pairs, lying in rows with barely enough room to breathe. They were fed minimal rations, usually consisting of rice, beans, and yams, and had very limited access to water. The lack of sanitation, coupled with the close quarters, led to the rapid spread of diseases. Many enslaved people did not survive the journey, and their bodies were simply thrown overboard. Resistance. Acts of resistance were common. Enslaved Africans often attempted to revolt, refuse food, or commit suicide to escape their dire circumstances. The crew, however, used brutal measures to suppress any uprisings, including the use of a device called a speculum oris to force-feed those who refused to eat. The transatlantic slave trade was driven by the enormous profits it generated for those involved. The Brookes was no exception, transporting around 5,000 enslaved Africans over its years of operation. Current USD value. If we were to calculate the value of the human cargo transported by the Brookes in today's terms, it would be staggering. The average price for an enslaved person in the late 18th century was around £30 to £50, equivalent to approximately $5,000 to $8,000 USD today. Considering that the Brookes carried around 5,000 enslaved Africans, the total value of its human cargo could exceed $100 million USD in modern terms. Economic impact. The profits from these voyages were immense, fueling the wealth of cities like Liverpool and contributing to the economic foundations of the British Empire. However, these profits came at an incalculable human cost. Millions of lives were lost or irreparably damaged, and entire societies were disrupted. The Brookes became infamous not only for its role in the transatlantic slave trade, but also as a symbol of the abolitionist movement. Abolitionist symbol. The diagram of the Brookes, published in 1788 by British abolitionists, played a significant role in raising awareness about the horrors of the slave trade. The image, which showed how 454 enslaved Africans were packed into the ship, shocked the British public and helped to galvanize the abolitionist cause. End of the slave trade. The outcry generated by images like the one of the Brookes 1807, which made the trade of enslaved Africans illegal in the British Empire. Although illegal slave trading continued for some time, this marked the beginning of the end for the transatlantic slave trade. Modern reflection. Today, the Brookes serves as a stark reminder of the atrocities committed during the transatlantic slave trade. It's a symbol of the cruelty of the past, but also of the enduring fight for human rights and dignity. Understanding this history is crucial in acknowledging the suffering of millions and ensuring that such horrors are never repeated. The Brookes is more than just a ship, it's a symbol of a dark chapter in history that we must never forget. By understanding the story of the Brookes and the horrors of the transatlantic slave trade, we can better appreciate the importance of human rights and the ongoing struggle for equality and justice. If you found this video insightful, please give it a thumbs up, share it with others, and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into history. Let's continue to learn from the past so we can build a better future together. This is Mars Sunset Media, and thank you for watching.